bench. Now from here, he's gonna put the bridge of his foot pretty close to his heel on that box. He's gonna lift the other leg so that his upper thigh is pointed straight up in the air. He's gonna sink nice and low to the bottom, and he's gonna come nice and high to the top. And because this is unloaded, you'll find that it's different than the next two progressions in that we're allowing Bryce's ribs and hips to drift apart a little bit such that he can get more range of motion, right? Generally, when we start to load this up, we wanna pull those 2 points together, but here it doesn't need to be quite as much of a focus. We really wanna get to as deep of a stretch at the bottom as we can, to as high of a point at lockout as possible.
The second exercise in the day 2 single leg hip thrust progression is a dumbbell B stance pause hip thrust. I know that's a mouthful, but we're going to describe every concept here. So the stance is what we refer to as a B stance. This is a unique exercise variation that we like to utilize that is halfway between a true unilateral or single leg exercise like exercise 1 or a true bilateral or double leg exercise. Significantly harder than a true bilateral, significantly easier than a unilateral. What we're doing is using one leg as the working leg and the other leg serves as a support. Think of it like a kickstand on a bike. So in this example, Coach Turner's right leg is his working leg and his left leg is just through the heel as a little bit of support like a kickstand. A really good rule of thumb here is that we have to be narrow in a B stance. If we try to get really wide, we can't control the weight distribution on one leg or the other. So keep your legs in line with your hips. A really good rule of thumb as well is having the heels and toes line up. That way the kickstand leg isn't too close and really getting in the way, and it isn't too far and really activating the hamstrings. Now from here, Coach Turner is going to perform a hip thrust where the bottom of his shoulder blades are really grabbing the side of the bench, and will place the dumbbell on the side of the working leg. Now from here, he's going to drive his hips up, focusing on driving through his heel with a vertical or nearly vertical shin. And the hips are extending, but this is also a huge focus, again, on the distance between the ribs and hips. What we're performing here to lock out at the very top is what's known as a posterior pelvic tilt, where the pelvis is rotating underneath the torso. And we can, again, pay attention to the distance between the ribs and hips, pulling them together, decreasing that distance as we come up to a really strong locked out hip position that does not involve really arching or putting a lot of stress through the low back. In a perfect world, at lockout, from shoulders to knees, you should have a straight line. Try to keep your chin tucked and your eyes forward to further help with core and glute activation and preventing the hips and ribs from increasing or really flaring.
So the third exercise for our single leg thrust progression is a dumbbell pause single leg hip thrust. Now, Coach Bryce will probably make this look very easy. This exercise is brutal, and honestly, you don't need to load this up too much past 20, 30 pounds if you're extremely strong. I think Coach Bryce could use 30 pounds, and get a nice working set out of this. And what's your max hip thrust for both legs?
905.
Okay, so he can hip thrust 900 pounds with both legs, but when we really isolate one leg and we focus on actually achieving a full range of motion, you don't need very much weight here outside of our body weight. So Coach Bryce is gonna set up much like the B stance variation that we did before this. We're looking on this lead leg. When he does come up to lockout, we're looking for a vertical shin here, which he's pretty much lined up for. He has the dumbbell over the working leg, and just like on the last variation, he's really keeping his full shoulder blade on the bench, and there actually isn't very much motion from his sternum up whatsoever. Now, another thing to note, I'm sure if we threw a 50-pound dumbbell on here, Coach Bryce would move it, but he wouldn't be able to come up and own lockout like he is here. His hip is at terminal hip extension. It can't extend anymore, right? And he's really getting his glutes to fire a ton in that locked out position. Something that we like to tell our clients on hip thrusts, if they have to ask us whether or not they locked out, they probably did not. Even in a difference of an inch in terms of range of motion at the top there can make a drastic difference in terms of glute activation, which is exactly what we're looking for here. If you look at the finishing power of a lot of submissions, they come from horizontally loaded hip extension. Think knee bar, arm bar, even things like a rear naked choke or a guillotine are largely driven by the hips forcefully extending against an outside force, which is exactly what we're looking to do here.
First exercise in our day 2 hip adduction progression is the Copenhagen plank from the knee. Now we can remember that this is adduction because it's spelled ADD and we are adding to the midline of our body. The adductor group or the groin plays a hugely important role in any pinching or wedging of the lower body in many grappling positions. And they're an often underutilized and undertrained muscle group. The Copenhagen plank is a great way to isometrically challenge this muscle group. So we can set up here from a relatively short lever from the knee and elbow. A lot of people make the mistake of leaving their hips hinged here, but we want to try to drive the hips forward so that we're in a straight line from shoulder to knee. Ideally, the shin is perpendicular to the femur and is parallel to the bench at a 90-degree angle. From here, Coach Turner is going to keep his shoulder packed underneath his body, not allowing it to come up towards the ear, and he's going to raise his bottom leg off of the ground, really focusing on pinching the bench in between his knees, maintaining a high hip position. You should really be feeling a lot of activation on the inside of the top leg. Hold this position for ideally 30 seconds at a time.
Exercise 2 of our progression for hip adduction is going to be a Copenhagen plank again, but instead of having the lever end at the knee, it's now going all the way down to the foot, which will make it considerably more challenging. Now, the only thing to keep in mind is that sometimes through the medial portion of the knee, we'll experience injuries in grappling. So if this hurts your knee for whatever reason, even if the muscles are strong enough to maintain the position, just regress back to the knee on the bench, and that will work well for the time being. Now, another thing to note here is that we're doing these for 30 seconds, but just like other timed exercises, if you can't yet do 30 seconds, start with your weaker side. Let's say you get 18 seconds on the weaker side. Just match that on the stronger side and get 18 seconds on that side. So from here, Coach Bryce is going to have his hips forward. He's going to keep that packed shoulder position. He's going to lift his hips up. He's going to bring his legs together and try to get that body in as straight of a line as he can, and ideally hold it for 30 seconds.
Final exercise in our day 2 hip adduction progression are Copenhagen raises. Exercises 1 and 2 are isometric, so we're looking to maintain the top position only. Here we're adding in a much more dynamic component where we're going to raise the hips and back down again until the bottom hip touches and taps, and then back up again. Do your best to keep the bottom leg off of the ground the entire time and really focus on driving through knee and elbow.